All right. All right. So today we're going to add an additional view to our health application here. And to do that, we have to create every view is managed by a class. And so this one we called My Activity, just because that was what was created by default. So we need to create a new class that extends the activity class. So it's going to be a subclass just like this. So I'm going to just copy this code. And let's create a new file in my source folder, a new Java class. And we'll call it, I'm going to call it weight logger. All right. And instead of just the public class weight logger, I'm going to call it extend the activity class. So this is going to be a subclass of the activity class, just like the My Activity class. Same thing. All right? So if we look at our My Activity, what was the first thing that we had to create in the My Activity class? The override, right? So this code we need to have. So, and I'm going to go ahead and copy all the way down to here, just so we can have some code here. And so we're going to override the onCreate class. And notice when I pasted that code in, it realized that I need to also include the bundle package. So every time I add something, it automatically imported the package that I needed for me, so which is nice. All right. So that's basically my next view. And instead of the main, see this set content view that happens is telling this particular view to use the main XML layout file, right? So we need to have this load a different layout file. And so let's go ahead and create that layout file. So if we right-click on our layout, let's create a new layout resource file. And I'm going to call it weight.
Can you create a master layout?
No. No. So this is now going to let us drag and drop some stuff on the screen. Eventually. All right, so there's my health application. This is my screen. I've got nothing in it. I'm going to, let's see if I can add the scroll view first. So I'm going to try to delete the linear layout first and add the scroll view first. All right, so that everything I now create is going to be inside the scroll view. That just makes sense rather than me having to go edit that text again. All right, so everything is good. Everybody see what I did there? I added a scroll view, and now everything is going to be in that scroll view, so if I rotate, I don't have to worry about changing it later. Okay? So in my view here, I'm going to have a little text view. Now that's interesting. It won't let me drag on top of here now. That's interesting. So here's my text view. Now it probably will. And we'll call this weight logger. All right. And I'm going to have this just as the title of my view here. And then I need to lay these out. So I wanted to try a different layout system. So I'm going to use this table layout. Okay? So I'm going to add the table layout That's interesting. It won't let me do that. Really? Gotta be kidding me. All right, just a second. Let's see if I can add it before. Okay, so I have to add my table layout first, and then I can put my text view inside of my table layout. Let's see if I can continue to do that, though. All right, good. All right, so let's go start over again. Wait, logger. This throws me off trying to do the scroll view first. I didn't have that problem. And this is, I'm going to create an input screen so that the user can enter the date, the time, and their weight for that day. And we're going to save those weights into a log file later on, into a database, so that we can then graph their weight over time. And you guys are going to be doing this similarly with different information to graph their blood sugar over time. Okay, so your logger is going to graph slightly different information. I can't do it all for you, right? But I'm pretty close. So I want to track their date, and then I want to have the time and their weight. It's funny that it doesn't. All right. But notice how it's putting it into a table system here. It worked differently before. And then I want their actual weight, right? All right. So, interesting. All right, so I need some edit boxes, right? I need to have an edit box in here for the date and an edit box in here for the time. And as I drag these in here, you see I can put them in the different cells that they are. Let's move my weight back here. And it's easier to add things that are next to each other this way in a table layout. And you see it creates these rows with the data inside each row, each column. So it's similar to a table in HTML, same kind of concept. And then I need a button, which we won't use for probably a week, but we need a button here anyway that's going to say something like save weight. All right, so there's my nice little view. Let's take the text out of this so there's nothing in here. Yes?
Just as it applies to our application, wouldn't it maybe be better on the main page to have an option to save that blood sugar information and just pull
Yep.
the date and time?
We'll be doing that.
Okay.
Yep. Good idea, but we'll actually be doing that. As you switch views, we can pass data between views, and the view will come over here, and we can save the data that was put in on the other page into this view, and then you can hit save. I just want to show you additional screens, though. I mean, there's lots of ways to do it, but yeah, right. And that's just to show you, the reason I'm doing it is to show you the different aspects of programming. This might not be the best way to write the application, right? So I've got to show you how we can pass data between views and all kinds of good stuff. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to start using this EDT and then the name of the form for my ID. And we're going to delete the text that's in there because I don't want the user to have to do that every time. So I'll call this EDT time so that we can get at the data. Isn't that, yeah, that's like almost Hungarian, right? EDT weight.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. All right. There we go. So I've got a nice little view. And now in my main project, my weight logger class, instead of loading the main XML file, I need to load what file? Weight. All right? And to not cause any confusion, I'm going to change this from app to view so that we're initializing a view here instead of the entire application. The first view that shows up is going to be my activity view. You can only get to this one by selecting something on the other view, which you'll see as we get to that. All right. So this, if I were to launch this, it would create this view and show the view for me. So I need some way, some user input way for my application to tell that the user wants to go to my weight logger screen, right? I have to have some way, because the only one that comes up if I run this now, the only thing that's going to come up is my activity, my BMI calculator, right? So I need to switch from that to this view. I have to have some way of doing that. Tabs, right. We'll get to that. There's a whole activity bar that we can add, which is like a menu bar. But for now, we're just going to have a little button. So in my main, I'm going to add a button at the bottom that says go to the weight logger, all right? So I'm going to add a little button to the bottom, and let's put this centered, and we'll call it weight logger. All right, and we'll call this right, very good. BTN weight logger. You think so? I'm not sure I'm using it consistently yet, but we'll get there. So there's my weight logger. I need to now tie that into some application, right? I have to do something when they click on that. So how do I do that? How do I add code that would, in the properties, okay? On click, I can say run a method in Java that I have yet to create, and it's going to be called, I'm going to call it switch to logger. All right. So then I have to write that code in my project, in my main activity log. I need a method, and I'm going to put it here at the bottom, called switch to logger. And it has to be public, void, and switch to logger. And it gets a view passed into it that I can now do something. So if I click that button, it's going to run this method, and this method will do everything I need to open up the new view, okay? And now here's where it gets a little interesting. A view, every connection from one view to another is done through a system called an intent. Have you guys read about that yet? Intent in your books that you've read, all of them, right? An intent is, I'm not quite sure why they called it an intent. The only thing I could come up with is this particular view intends to do something else with something else on the phone. And that could be anything. I intend to use the contact system. So I use an intent to go get access to the contacts. I use an intent to switch to another view. I use an intent to call the phone, to call the phone dialer. Everything is done through this intent. So I have to first create an intent that's based on the new class that I created. So I create an intent, and I'm going to call it weight logger. So that's the type. It's a weight logger. And we're going to create a new intent that is based on this particular view, which is my activity, followed by the new class that I just created, the weight logger class. And I have to tell it .class. Right? And notice that intent is not found, so I use the Alt-Enter, and it will import the class for me up here at the top. Now I've got my intent package imported for me automatically. All right? And then I have to, once I have an intent created, that's an object, an intent object that I could do stuff with. And what I want to do is I need to start that new activity. So one activity starts another activity. So all I have to do is call the start activity, and I pass it the intent that I just created, my weight logger intent. All right. Now, one more thing I have to change. The inside of my main manifest file, my Android manifest XML file, this is where all of the intents are for my particular application. And you notice that I already have my main activity. That's the main my activity. And then it's got some intent filter in here. And I want to add another activity. So every view is an activity, right? A view is an activity. So I need to add a whole nother activity in here. And we give it the name of a property, the Android name is, and we use the .weight logger because that's our class that we had. And we close our activity. Okay, we don't have anything in there yet. Now, the dot, I was getting there, the dot comes from this package. Otherwise, I'd have to put this entire com.example.hello Android right before the weight logger. So this is a shortcut for using this entire package name, .weight logger. So it's another activity inside of the package. Does that make sense? Okay. So that should be all I have to do, hopefully. I haven't forgotten anything. So let's run our project. And notice how it's starting this intent. Now we understand what that means. It's starting the hello Android.myActivity intent, which is the first intent that we have. All right? So here we're nice and happy, and we can do the calculations. If I click on this button, it's going to load the new activity, theoretically. Did it do it? Yay, look at that. So it didn't blow up, right? So now I can type in my new date, my time, and my weight, and save it in the database later. But at least now I have a way of getting to this new screen. All right? Any questions on all of that? That was a lot of interesting code there to do that. Any? Right. So if I do my back button, theoretically, it comes back to my body mass calculator. Right. Well, let's see. Good question. So I have these two things filled in. I go to my weight logger. And here I'm in my weight logger. I hit the back button. And because I have, hopefully, Yes, because I have the respond, the saved instant state methods that I wrote. These on save instant state, those are going to be saving data for me. All right, isn't that great? So I can use a button like this, or I can use the back button. So let's add a button to my weight logger so that I can go back to my BMI calculator. All right, so just to show you how we can go backwards using a button instead. And later we will take all of this and move it into an action bar, which is a menu to go to all of our screens that we might have, because we're going to have 4 or 5 different screens or activities. All right, so let's go to our weight logger XML file, and I need a button here now that lets me go back, switch back to the main BMI calculator. All right, let's see what I called mine. Yep, so I called mine BMI calculator, BTN calc. And I want that to run a method when they click on that I'm going to write, and I'm going to call it switch to calc, right? So switch to logger, switch to calc. So I need to now add the code for this, and what file does that code need to be in?
It's 8 o'clock.
It's 8 o'clock, by the way, just so you know. Which file would that go in? No. My weight logger class, right? So I need a method in here that does something. So I need a public void switch to calc that takes a view, and it's going to switch back to that. Oops. And Alt-Enter gives me the importing of the view package that I need. All right, now and this is where I had some fun playing with this when I first wrote this. I was thinking that you had to create an intent on this side and switch to the new my activity. The problem was every time I was switching back, it was creating a new activity every time. And I couldn't figure out why my data wasn't being saved, because it was creating a brand new my activity view from scratch. It wasn't taking the one that, every time it creates a view, it stacks them on top of each other. And when I quit or hit the back button, it throws this one away and goes to the one that called it. So really all my switch to calc has to do is call a method called finish. Say, I'm done with this view. And when it finishes, that's basically what the back button does. So the back button and this button will be identical. So that's all it does. It switches back. So let's just run that, make sure it works. No, the theme is done in the manifest file. And let's go look at that theme. No, it wasn't. It was white, wasn't it? So the theme is done in the application tag, which is above the activities. So the activities basically inherit that same theme. So yeah, I'm getting white. Oh, well, let's go to the weight logger. It hasn't switched. There we go. And then I hit my BMI calculator to go backwards. It calls that finish method, which should be the same as hitting this back button, and I get back to here. So I should also have my my data saved as well.
That's what throw me off on the IntelliJ, it's showing.
Oh, it's always black, right? Yes, right.
Yeah.
And then I hit my BMI calculator to go backwards. And I have my data saved again. All right?
But if you had that on your second screen, you're not going to save that information. You're going to throw it away because you're going to feed it against these.
Right. Right. So that's why we're going to do some other things in this view. So the first thing we want to do is what Doug was saying. We want to save and pass some data to the new view as we create it. All right. So what would be the data that we might want to pass from this to the weight logger? My weight. Okay. So, and where is the file that what method is being executed when I say open the weight logger? My switch to logger. Okay. So in this, remember that I created this intent object. So weight logger is an intent object, and so I can do intenty type stuff with it, right? And there is a method called put extra. And I can pass additional information, and it stores it inside of this intent structure, and it gets passed as startup activity to the new view. All right? So I want to pass in, and I give it they're all based on key value pairs. So I'm going to pass it this weight, and I'm going to tell it what am I going to get? Where do I get the weight off of this view, off of my main BMI calculator? My weight in, that's my edit text, and I can call the get text on it and convert that to a string, and that will now get whatever's in that text box, stuff it into this key weight. So I have a key and a value pair. That puts it inside of this intent structure that gets passed to the new activity. All right, so that's half of the equation. Any questions on that so far? And I can put as many data points as I want into this structure. I can pass multiple pieces of information because they're all stored in these key value pairs. Right. Right. Yeah. I'd put them all in different keys. Right. I would do something like height if I wanted to pass the height, and I'd get the height. Things like that. So I could have a bunch of these put extras, each one stored with the key. All right. So when I start my new activity, it's going to go over to my weight logger class and start this. Now, it passes in some information inside of this, and we need to now retrieve that information from that intent structure. All right? So to do that, we have to get the data. So I'm going to do that all in my initialize view method, which gets called from my onCreate. And I'm going to say, I'm going to create I need a variable to hold this information. So I'm going to make it a property of my class. Private intent, type of an object, and I'll call it current intent. All right, so I need to import the package for this guy. And then inside of here, I'm going to assign my current intent from a method called getIntent. Okay, so that will call whatever the intent was that created me. I'm going to get all the data that was put into that structure. So that gives me that entire structure that has that put extra data into it. Then instead of putting the data, I call this, it's of type bundle. and I'm going to get some data from this current intent. And it's called get extras. All right, that gets me all of the data that I need that were put into it specially and stores it in this extra structure. And then I have to do something defensively. I have to say, if extras actually has something in it, then I want to get data out of that. All right, so let's, if my extras is not null, because if nobody passed in did any put extras, this extras would be null, and I wouldn't be able to get anything from it. So I have to defensively check that. Otherwise, when I try to get the data from it, it'll crash. All right, so I can call extras.getString and pass it the key that I want to retrieve from that, which on the other side of the activity, I passed it in under the key of weight. So this gets me a string. And how do I set that string in a view into an element on my view that I have? Set text, right? So I look at my EDT weight, which I haven't defined yet. I have to define that. And I can call set text on whatever I get back from these guys. So I don't have to store it in another variable. This returns a string, and this stuffs it into my edit weight text area. So this is not defined, and I need to define those whenever those get created in my initialize app. So I need to do that first. So I'm going to call it edit weight is an edit text type. And remember, how do we find that information from the view? Find view by ID, right? And we look in the main resource file ID of EDT weight. All right. Then I need a variable as a property of my class. So I'm going to call this an edit text EDT weight. All right. So everything is happy except that these are not imported yet. So I need to do the Alt-Enter, and that imports my edit text widget package. All right, so let's go back and look at this again. So my onCreate, whenever this gets created, I call my initialize view. This is then where I find and store my little pointer to that text area on the view so that I can do stuff with it later on. Then I look for the current intent if there is one. And if I get data in there, I pull out the key weight and I stuff it into this edit weight text area box. So that's all that's doing. All right, any questions on that? Let's run it. Yeah, we actually did. All right. So, yeah, put my weight in here, right? So I need 180 pounds or 18 pounds, fine, whatever. Go to my weight logger. It will call that put extra, stuff it into the intent, start my new view, pull that data out, and stuff it into my weight as a string. And it passed it as a string, so that's why I got this extra 0. Isn't that great? Isn't that exciting? I can pass data back and forth between my views. Because remember, Android is very aggressive about destroying these suckers. So if I rotate this guy, and it's not consistent from what I can tell, it actually saved it this time. But there's no reason on my view for that to save. I don't have any onsaved state method called for my particular weight logger class. Yeah, so that's possible, right? So let's put something in here. Let's put something in here.
There you go.
And then rotate it. That saved it. There's just no guaranteeing anything here. Right, from the intent. Right. It does make sense. But not the time. Boy, that's...
Why would you put in the date and time?
Why
Why not just have it automatically?
not? Good shill question. Why would I have them put in the date and time? Wouldn't it be better if I actually found that for them as a default?
Because
Good question, because that's the next thing we're going to do.
people like to put in dates in the past.
Right, I need to let them change it, right? Yesterday I weighed so much, but as a default, I should get the current date and time from the device, right? Fill them up with some default strings and let them edit them if they want. That's what we're going to do next.
Maybe they're at the beach house or whatever.
Right. Oh, yeah, yes, exactly.
Get to their phone for an hour.
Exactly. So we will be doing that, and I don't think we have time today to do that, but
Turned off their phone for dinner.
When we get to the point where we'll talk phone to phone.
Probably next quarter we'll do that. Yep. Because I want to do like the battleship program, phone to phone. I think that'd be fun. All right. Any questions where we're at? I don't think we have time to do that, but tomorrow we will fill these in automatically with the current date and time, and then we will add a way so that, because users are stupid, right? You don't want them to mess up by putting a bad date format in here. So what would be a nicer way to let them edit the date and the time? A date picker, right. They actually have a date picker in Android, believe it or not. So the idea would be if I click on this field, that means that I want to edit that. And so I'm going to bring up a dialog box that will show a date picker, and you can scroll up and down and pick your date. And when you hit OK, it fills in the right date and the right format for me that I can save into my text file. There is a time picker, so we'll do the same for the date and the time picker. So,
It's not February 30th?
yeah, no. All right. So we will be doing that. That's some fun stuff. That took some serious Googling and book reading to figure out how to do all that. So I will impart my knowledge on you. All right.